What's up, guys? Welcome to the Saturday show. Now, on Saturdays, I like to go back through the week of Newswave and take a look at what you guys had to say down in the comments based on what we talked about each day. It's a lot of fun to see what you guys are thinking about all different topics, and if you missed the day, it's a good way to kind of get caught up throughout the week and see what we were talking about and everything. So first, though, I want to go over an interesting piece of news that kind of popped up. It was weird because it popped up earlier in the day, and then by the end of the day, it was kind of flipped around. And this was from Blizzard, where people were asking about crossplay. And this was actually from Business Insider, where a representative said it's a matter of when, not if, for crossplay, which was cool. That was really neat, because we had originally had been told that crossplay might be looked at, but it's not being looked at right now when interviews were going on for the Nintendo Switch version of Diablo 3. Great, except one issue. Later on in the day, another representative gave a statement to DualShocker saying, "While we love the idea of bringing our players together across platforms, we do not have any plans to implement cross-platform gameplay for Diablo at this time." It's an interesting thing to happen here, where one representative says, "Yeah, we're working on it. It's going to happen. It's a matter of when, not really if." So this is weird, right? It kind of reminds me of that time where they almost announced that Diablo 3 was going to be going to the Switch through, the Switch being flipped on the little night light there, and they were like, "Oh no, we're not that clever, guys." And then months later, "Oh, Diablo 3's coming to the Switch." This feels like it could be miscommunication, where a representative was like, "Oh yeah, we're working on that," and they weren't supposed to say that, but they didn't get the memo that they were embargoing that, or it's something they're kind of experimenting with in the background without actually having plans to implement it. Or maybe this really is just a representative just misspeaking and saying, yeah, crossplay, and then the person in the background's like, "Wait, we never talked about crossplay. What's going on here?" So it's interesting, but of course, their most recent issue with that Switch being flipped on the nightlight for Diablo 3 doesn't really give us a lot of confidence that they are telling us the truth here with, no cross-platform play. So we'll see. I'll be curious if it's something that's being worked on and they're waiting for the Switch version to come out, maybe have an update down the road, maybe with like a new expansion or something. Maybe they're waiting to announce it at one of their events that it's coming up. It's interesting to see, but we'll keep an eye on this and just see if they once again flip-flop again back and forth on cross-platform play for Diablo. And with that quick piece of news out of the way, let's jump into Newswave, starting with Monday, where we went over a big leak for Nintendo, where the entire Mario Party game for the Switch appeared online days before release. Reggie also attempted to explain the voice chat app that we use on our phones, explaining that it works because you always have your phone with you. Alejandro says, "Have you actually used the voice app in games like Mario Kart? It works really well. It has improved a lot since launch." Yeah, actually, I checked it out just quickly on Mario Kart to see how it worked now, as people were saying that it was working better. Evan also tried it out in the random matchmaking, and yes, it works. It working isn't really the issue. Just the existence of the app is the issue as the sole way to voice chat. Like I said before, if they had that app and they also have a native way to talk to people on the Switch, so options, I wouldn't actually have a problem with the app's existence if it was an optional thing. But this is them telling you need to use your phone to voice chat online while not using a better service like Discord, or, punching in the phone number on your Switch, on your cell phone with your Switch in your hand. It's not a good reason for it. Again, it's just Nintendo Japan being Nintendo Japan and then saying, "Here, Reggie, go explain this to the American audience." And he just goes, "Thanks, guys," and then walks out and tries to explain it in the way that he did. So it's, again, not how the app works, it's just that the app exists at all. Tuesday went over Guacamelee 1 and 2 hitting the Switch this year. The first one launched out of nowhere that day, with the second one following up this winter. Microsoft finally announced their new game streaming service titled Project xCloud that will enter beta next year, with an emphasis on mobile devices. Nicholas says, "The day a company goes full-time streaming their services is the day I stop buying from them. Internet in my part of the world is rubbish and won't get any better anytime soon. Also, latency is something we all learn to hate. Some people don't care, or they will, and it won't be long until they hate lag like everyone else." So I don't know if a company is going to go full on like just streaming. Now, you could see like Ubisoft and EA try to get us to that point, because then if they can get their own server set up to stream and everything, and it makes sense like financially, they can cut out the middleman being like Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, right? If they're streaming themselves. And that's why they have their own stores like Uplay and everything, and EA has Origin, because they don't want to pay Steam an amount of money either, but Steam is still much larger. Game streaming is just interesting to these companies because there is no barrier of entry. There's no console you have to buy. But I do think Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo will still always want to at least sell a piece of hardware, whether it's like this Scarlet hardware that's coming out that apparently is going to be a streaming-only box for significantly cheaper, right? Or if it is just a dedicated system. The one thing I can say is, well, Sony and Nintendo probably will not go towards all streaming, maybe even our lifetime, to be honest, just because Nintendo has a hard enough time with online. I don't want to see them try to stream a game. But Sony has done a great job selling hardware in a time when it's, as we see, kind of hard to sell a home console straight up. It's just they have good games. So yeah, they could sell hardware, but because they have good games, they could probably also sell a streaming service if they wanted to. JV says, what is Microsoft going to stream if they have no games to begin with? And then just a lot of ha-has. Here's the thing about Microsoft. They've kind of given up on this generation, if you haven't figured that out at this point. I think it was like maybe a few months after they decided to just not even report numbers anymore for their hardware, is around the time they started to call it a day and kind of coast to next generation. Remember, we had a lot of issues with the Xbox One out of the gate, right? They wanted to do DRM and all this crazy stuff. The Kinect has to be, part of the system. It has to plug in. The system was $500 on launch, which was an issue when the more powerful PS4 was $100 cheaper and offered pretty much everything we wanted, where it was like, mostly DRM free, you have to be online. The Xbox One had an issue out of the gate, and that was a lot of it had to do with Don Matrick, who's not there anymore. Whereas this will be Phil Spencer's coming up, his first generation that he gets to launch straight up at a higher position in the company as well, where he has more say. That's why he's buying a lot of these developers. And I'm going to tell you now, Microsoft is working on several games in the background that are good enough, compelling enough to make people who didn't want an Xbox all of a sudden think about buying an Xbox. The issue is, though, those people might also just want to build a PC, and Microsoft doesn't care because you're probably loading up Windows anyway on that system. But the thing about the Xbox is it'll probably always be in third place between all the consoles, because Microsoft is giving you less and less of a reason to buy an Xbox, but more and more of a reason to buy into their ecosystem. That's their strategy now. They want you to be a part of their ecosystem, not necessarily buy their game system. They want you to have Windows 10. They want you to be streaming your stuff on their stuff on your phone or buy their system. But they are showing up next generation, probably even as early as the launch of this next system coming up, possibly end of next year, by the way, 2019, with a couple of heavy hitters that you guys will probably be happy to see come back. Wednesday went over mods appearing in Skyrim on the Switch after hackers decided to start programming them in. This, of course, is due to Bethesda not including mods similar to other versions of the game on Xbox and PlayStation. News also broke that Microsoft is looking to buy Obsidian, with the deal being pretty much completed. Doku says, hackers have been accomplishing so much more than Nintendo. They got Virtual Console on the Switch, cloud saves on the Switch before the official reveal, now mods for Skyrim. Nintendo should just try and work together with the hackers. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. Well, I shouldn't say that, because Nintendo has worked with hackers already. There is, of course, that website where if you're a hacker and you know a way to modify a system and exploit a loophole of some kind, you can report it to them and you'll actually be paid a bounty. We talked about that a while ago, and people are cashing in. So Nintendo is kind of working with hackers, but they're not working to downright implement features with hackers like this. And there's a lot of paperwork that has to go on in the background for things like mods for Skyrim to go on between companies and everything. Whereas if people who exploit and homebrew on the system want to do it, they could get together and just do it without having to file paperwork or do all this other stuff in the background. Even Virtual Console, there's licensing and rights they have to do, especially if you want to put like a third-party game on there. It's a whole thing, but hackers don't have to go through that. And that's why I see this stuff popping up so fast. But Nintendo should still get on the ball with some of this stuff, because the fact that there's no local backups, that there's not a lot of paperwork that has to happen for that. And Nintendo's working on it right now, and they have it pretty much it pretty much works, but they're not releasing it. I don't know why. Maybe there's still some stuff going on in the background where it comes to the save files being exploited. It's a feature that should be there because the only way to back up your saves right now is by paying them for their online service. That does feel pretty bad. Thursday went over a massive day one update for Black Ops 4 that only appears to affect owners of the physical copy. The update comes in at 50 gigabytes in size. When finished, however, the game seems to revert to 52.96 gigabyte, making us wonder if they refined a bunch of the game through an update. We also Super Mario Party topping sales charts in Japan, becoming the best-selling Mario Party game since Mario Party 9. Milky says, the whole downloading 50 gigs day one should not be a thing. They should have all that stuff on the disc. If the game isn't ready, then they should not release it. Having to download something that big is ridiculous. How about they wait and not do something like this? That's bad business, in my opinion, essentially selling you a half-baked game. I'm very curious as to what happened here because I had a copy provided to me by Activision, a digital copy, so I downloaded it and it was, like I said, a little over 52 gigabytes. But the disc is full when you buy it, and then there's a 50 gigabyte day one update, it replaces a lot of the stuff, fixes a lot of the stuff. It's like they basically made you download the whole game all over again, and I don't know why. It's a very weird situation because it's not like this game would have had to have come on 2 discs. It would have just been 1 disc with everything on it and maybe like a 2 gigabyte update. So I don't know what happened here. I'm very curious if anyone ends up figuring it out. Maybe they really did just have to update everything and they just made you re-download the whole game and replace a lot of stuff. I don't know, but if you download it digitally, you don't have that problem. So it's almost like they shipped a version of the game that was too old and full of bugs, and then they just made you re-download it and replace all of those bugs. It's weird. Frito says, I wish developers would go back to using multiple discs in game packages. This is interesting because there is a theory going on right now, and I don't know how correct it is because I know there are reviews out in the wild now, but I believe they are all digital. There was this theory going around that Red Dead Redemption 2 would actually be a multi-disc game after people spotted on Twitter for GameStop where they posted what looked like a very thick game case. So people had a theory because we know it's going to be over 100 gigabytes, like 110 gigabytes or something for Red Dead Redemption 2. There was a theory that they were actually shipping it on 2 Blu-rays, and I don't know how correct that is yet. We won't know, obviously, until we get closer to release and they start hitting store shelves and stuff, or people in the back end, like the warehouse and stuff, start seeing the packages. But I would be okay with that if they started shipping 2 Blu-rays just to make sure you didn't have to download large chunks of the game when you buy it. But I'd be curious as the cost as well. I don't think Blu-rays cost a ton of money for these developers, but I mean, they're shaving whatever margin they can off. So if they just have to provide you 1 Blu-ray and then you download the rest, they'll probably do that. Finally, on Friday, we took a look at an interesting lawsuit Sony is bringing against a person selling modified PS4 systems online that included pirated games as well as documentation on how to load even more. Toys R Us is also back in the news after they announced plans to relaunch this holiday season as Jeffrey's Toy Box. Alex Mod says, I've been selling modded consoles loaded with games on eBay for a long time. Many other people do as well. This is nothing more than Sony puffing their chests, trying to scare off others. And I actually agree with that. I think this is a lot to do with Sony realizing that people are selling these stuff online, so they have to pick someone out and they have to make an example out of them. I think they picked the one that was the most cut and dry, especially after they bought the system, and it came with preloaded games, and it circumvented their anti-piracy measures, and the person provided documentation on how to do more modification to the system. It was so easy for them to do this. They bought it, they spent, a couple $100s or something to buy them, get the proof that they need, and then file a lawsuit, and then kind of publicize it a bit here to put people off from doing that. That's the whole point. If you sell stuff online that's pirated, that is modified, and it circumvents our anti-piracy, well, look out because you might get sued. It's just trying to make it so hackers think twice, or people who want to sell these modified consoles online think twice, and maybe get some of them just not sell it at all because of that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for the Saturday show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys like the video if you liked it, disliked it if not, and then leave comments below about everything we talked about in the week of Newswave, and especially Blizzard flip-flopping back and forth on the cross-platform play. I'm curious what you think about that, and if cross-platform play is coming to Diablo 3, and if they're just holding it off for an announcement, or maybe this was just someone misspeaking on behalf of the company. I'm curious if they're actually going to show up with it, because it would be pretty cool if they did. Also, make sure you stop by later on tonight for Spawncast. We're going to have a lot of fun here talking about all different games and other things in the news. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.